Hello, and welcome to week two of creating organizational coherence in the midst of change. I am Yoni Gordis, again speaking to you from unceded territory of the Coast Salish Nation here in the town known as Vancouver, British Columbia. So we're entering week two, and I want to start off with an acknowledgement that I know that week one was not a simple week for everyone. Coming off of the crescendo and all the hard work that went into preparing for the holidays, and all the wonderful, hopefully, time with family, friends, and all that's important to you. Coming back into the world is not an easy re-entry. Takes some time, on the physical, spiritual, intellectual levels to re-enter. So I want to, on the one hand, be cognizant of the fact that it's taking some time. On the other hand, encourage you, giving you the gentle nudge to say, come back into the world. We're excited to have you back in. There's a lot of really good and important work to do. So last week we started with the introduction to change management, really an overview of some of the key elements, and many of them we will revisit in the next few weeks. This week we're going to start with one of perhaps even before basics, and it is really the question of the feasibility of change. So very often in our practice, in the past 25 or so years of working in a variety of sectors, people will come to us and say, we want to go through a change. Either we know what it is that we need to change, or we know what the changes that we want to have happen. Sometimes they'll just name a need, but very often what we will find out is that just because someone has an idea for change or a desire for change does not necessarily mean that they can pull it off. You need a lot of things in place for intentional change to happen. Even for small changes, you need a lot of thought and coordination, big changes even more so. So how do you know if you have the ability, if the change that you envision is actually possible? Excuse my cough, it's the winter here in Vancouver. So that's what we're going to look at this week. It's all about, really, the first thing, first and foremost, is about the people. So we are going to look very deeply this week at stakeholders, the people who have a stake in the process, really shifting around how we view who might be an actor on the stage of the drama that we have, who are the real players, and thinking about how you work with each one of them. So we'll talk about how you map people, how you get them on board. I want to take just a few minutes to review a few factors that we're going to touch upon in the next week, so you get a sense of it. So there are really four major factors that are part of the recipe, if you will, for change. Imagine them as the ingredients that get mixed in various ways, different kinds of flour, different kinds of sugar, or butter, or eggs. But each one of these four components is really vital to understanding. The first one is the context for change. What's the market? And if I bring in terms from the business world here, I hope you understand that we have a lot to gain from them, just as the business world has a lot to gain from the work that you do itself. So what is the market around the change that we want to make? Is there competition? Are there others doing similar work? Is there something newer, something older that still has a hold? Are there external needs? Is something happening to our primary clientele that needs addressing that didn't previously? That's context. People, and it's people in this work all the time. What kind of leadership do we have in place? What's its history? What's its proven ability to bring about change? What's its relationship with the folks? You saw this through the three lenses last week, through the case studies. That's so often how leadership positions itself and how well it knows the people that it's working with, even on the most local or junior levels. That's where real change can come from. So you have leadership and you have human capital in general. Human capital being that resource of that is people that can do the work, and that can bring the wisdom, that can find the resources internally. And do they have the core competencies? Do they actually have the skill set that will be needed? If you want to take your company from an analog world to a digital world and go really online with everything and get rid of paper, you can say you want to do that change, but do people in your organization actually know how to do that? Is that what they'll be able to accomplish with you? If not, how do you find the right people? Context, people. 3, resources. Context, people, and resources. Resources are the finances. Very often, the reason things have not changed is because they are the most financially manageable, or it seems to be so. We would ask you, therefore, is the money available to help you go through the change? Times of change often create a bump in all kinds of spending, internally and externally. And finally, do you have the resource of time? If everybody is busy from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon every day, and they're barely finishing the work they have, how will they give extra time to something that really needs attention? Context, people, and that was resources. And fourth, culture. We will talk a lot about organizational culture over the next few weeks. But what's the history of your organization? Can you lead it through? Does it have a history of succeeding at challenges, or does it actually not change readily? And what are the levers within that organization? Some people say levers. Some things can be moved, some things cannot, on principle or because of history. Can you get the management to change the way something is done, or don't touch that? Or are there things that actually are habits that we have that potentially could handle rejigging and there will be openness? How do you map those? And ultimately, is there an internal need for this change that you're going to be proposing? See, what we're going to ask you to start to do this week is to name a change that you want to explore and workshop over the next 5 weeks. Week one was an introduction. Weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5, we will work on various aspects of workshopping a specific change that you want to try. It doesn't mean that you will actually do it. It can be one that you're really thinking of, or one that you actually are not even sure would be possible. Don't take something that you've already done, if possible. So take something that you want to do, and we will map out together all the various aspects that we're starting to touch upon today. So you will go through this week your first change map. You'll take an initial look at the change that you want to embark on and that you're going to workshop. It'll ask you a few basic questions from your gut. This does not have to be fleshed out. It should just be honest. Oh, here's how I would like to see it. It will be edited by you over and over and over the next 5 weeks. It might not even at the end resemble what you're putting down this week. Don't worry about it. Whatever you get down is great. And then ultimately we'll end up reverse engineering to a certain degree, to a rectified world, if you will. We will be looking to see how can we achieve your change, what needs to happen to get us there, what pieces need to move and how. But as I mentioned, this week is really about a lot about the human factor, about the stakeholders. So in the feasibility for change, for the most part, you look around, will there be the people who you can work with? So we will introduce you to an archetype system that is 5 primary characters on the stage, and you will analyze people in the change that you want to embark on and see who plays these roles. Those are the 5 are champions. Who are champions of our idea or of us? Who are ambassadors? Who are people who actually can carry the message but don't need to lead it fully? Who are passengers? People who are along for the ride but won't resist much. Who are the skeptics? Those people who are constantly doubting. How do you navigate them? And who are the saboteurs? Those who will put in energy to actually stop things from changing. All of these characters have a right to be on the stage. No one has an obligation to back your change. You need to get them on board with it. Working with each one of these characters is a different adventure and one that we will explore deeply. Finally, we will look at psychological complexity, people's personalities, how one aligns with the organization or not, how satisfied people are with their roles, and structural inequities where they appear. We will look finally during this week at buy-in opportunities. How do you build support for your efforts? How do you get buy-in for ideas once you have them? What are the basics of communication that you want to touch upon? That includes things like transparency and clarity, language of opportunity, meaning here's something that we can do together rather than seeing the negatives or the issues at hand. How do we look positively? And language of individualization, making sure that it fits everyone in the way that works for them. Finally, we will look at how you distribute responsibility a little bit responsibly and strategically. How do you give people the amount of work that they can handle in a way that strengthens your leadership and the change actually happening? And it will conclude with a stakeholder analysis of that will take a look at who are the people in your change and how are they actually going to play a role, what can you do, and what are the immediate steps we'll look at in the next few weeks that you can take about doing with them to move your change forward. So this will be a jump into looking at people. As always, I want to remind you that we're going to try to do this work with respect. So to say that someone is a saboteur, for instance, in the iconography I laid out earlier, does not mean that that person is a bad person or a person who is a negative person. At times, the world needs us to be saboteurs of things and to turn over the tables. We need to make sure certain things stop. At times, we need to be champions. Any of us can play any of these roles. A person is not a champion on every piece of change or a passenger on every piece of change. We all have the ability to be in different positions in each, and I invite you to view your colleagues in that way as well. It is with an open heart and a positivism that we even welcome the skeptics into the room. I have to say that skeptics have perhaps the most important role in the room because they really call us on our stuff. They say to us, wait a second, pause before you run forward. Can you pull this off? In fact, this whole week might be dedicated, as we think about feasibility, to the skeptics who are going to say, hey, wait a second, I could get behind this, but you need to answer a few really good questions before we dive in. So I wish you the best of luck. I hope you find the week engaging. Looking forward to seeing you on the various discussion boards, etc. Welcome back. Happy Monday.